All right, we are recording now. Don't forget to use the raise hand feature if you want to be able to ask Don a question, and definitely get those questions coming in. We don't want to have a lot of dead silence like we did last time. So Don, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, right now, everybody should be going through their hive. And right now, the biggest thing I keep hearing is combining hives, combining hives. To me, that's a total waste. That's backing up. If your hive is that weak, it's a whole lot smarter. If you got them in a 10 frame or even an 8 frame with the 2 supers on there, pull that stuff down, put them in a 5 frame. Those bees, 95% of the time, will turn around because you have a problem in that hive. Either you're not checking it, the hive is swarmed, there's not enough bees, there's not enough bees to take care of the area that you've got 2 supers in there, a big box, and if you can downsize them to a smaller box, they will actually turn around and do a lot better. I have never combined hives probably in 40, 45 years. And right now, you should be doing change outs, which put another hive there, change the hive out, go through it, check for those hive beetles. No matter if you live in the north, south, east, or west, right now, you should have an entrance reducer in there, 6-inch opening by 3/8 high. That's going to help eliminate your robin. And that way, the bees will have a better chance to build up, defend that hive. And you should be feeding them. I've had several hives I went through in the last couple of days that had a super or super half of honey. The frames was absolutely bone dry. So bees are eating where you're at, but we've had a lot of rain. So, you get a day or two where they go out and work, and 5 to 7 days, they're eating. If you got bees hatching, those young bees don't fly out and replace all that honey or that nectar. So they're eating stores up. So put the sugar to them. And another thing is you should be thinking about what you're going to do next year. Get your plan going. You want to make increases? Now's the time to do it. Buy sugar, feed them. If you're going to stay in this for a while, get you some pollinating jobs set up. Check organic farms. There's a good place there. You don't need to set your bees on anybody's property for free. Anybody you set your bees on, they are benefiting more than what you are. A quart of honey, 2 quarts of honey, more than enough. So if you're looking around for organic farms, make sure you talk to the person, find out what they're treating with, what they're controlling weeds with, all that type stuff. If they spray, are they going to replace your hives? So there's a lot of things to think about. We've got several of our students in here. People's been talking about getting into bees, want to make a living at it. They just can't make that initial move. Now, most of the people that's been down here took classes from me. If they're not selling bees, usually in 6 months or a year, they fell asleep and they're on vacation a lot. We got Greg in here. He's out of Ohio. He bought a bunch of nukes for us, and he's probably split them things 2 or 3 times already. And buy stock that you can depend on. That's good breeding stock. We had Jason in here on the last chat, and he had AI queens available and production queens. So get your stock lined up, get your orders in. Now's the time to start getting that stuff lined up. And I know everybody's got a bunch of questions to ask, so I'm going to start taking questions and hopefully give you some good answers.
Okay. Paul, you were up first. Go ahead.
I tell you, it felt like yesterday, like the beginning of the year, April, I was dying for the season to start off. And here we are now going into fall, and it's like, oh God, now I got to wait another winter to get back into my bees. But anyway, I just wanted to say, I have a bunch of supers on yet, which I want to take off in the next, after the goldenrod flow. But what do you do, Don, if you have a half a super of uncapped honey? Would you extract it and feed it back to the bees before it ferments? Or, how do I go about dealing with half full supers?
Well, I kind of dealt with that, 3 or 4 chats back, but I pulled a bunch of honey off, I think it was 2 years ago. If it's completely sealed or 3/4 sealed, I would put it in one extraction. And if it's partly sealed, or you got maybe an inch or so, turn the frame sideways, give it a little shake. If nothing comes, shaking out, you're pretty good. I wasn't even worried about that. What I done is just cut all the comb out and put it in a kettle, bring it up to where the wax will sort of melt, solidify, pour it into buckets, and then just let it harden. The wax will form a cap on the top, and just use it as bee feed. If you bring it up to a boil, you're going to knock all the alcohol out, and it's not going to ferment. But if you don't do that process, it will ferment, and then it'll smell like a brewery. Or if you got it in buckets, you'll hear this big boom in your basement where the bucket blew apart. So be sure to do one or the other.
So you want to bring it up to a slight simmer?
I do. I bring it up to where the wax melts. Now, there's people that's all the time talking about saving their frames from one year to the other. And I've talked about it on other chats. If you put a brand new frame of wax in between two and go back in 2 days, they start to draw it. More than likely, that's where you're going to find the queen laying on that new foundation. And if you put an old comb in there, you're running the risk where they might have picked up some traces of pesticide from someone's yard. Either they got king green in there, or they've got a garden and they put a little pesticide in there. So you're going to get that stuff build up. And then it's a good idea to keep rotating comb out anyhow.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say also, Don, I finally got my LLC, I got my insurance, and I'm selling my honey at some local farmers markets around here. And I just want to say thanks, because I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, I'm glad that everybody is taking them steps forward. Pretty soon you'll be making all kinds of money, and you'll be driving that yellow car all painted up like a bee.
Oh, yeah, I'm just waiting to get the Mercedes.
Get you a French fry mobile.
But thanks again, Don.
Okay.
Okay. Over to Anthony. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, Rob. Oh, wait a minute. I turned my volume down. Hey, Paul. Brushy Mountain sells 1/8 hardware cloth. It's $3 a foot, but it's 36 inches wide. And they may not be the only one, but I double checked. And if you look at Brushy Mountain, you can certainly get it and buy just what you want. All right, $3 a foot.
All right, great. Thanks, Anthony. I'll look on their website.
Yeah, man. That's all I have for now. Go ahead.
Okay. Over to Philip. Go ahead, Philip.
Hey, Don.
Hey.
Got a question. I went out and I did some extracting tonight. Basically, I have a deep brood box and a medium, and then I had the queen excluder and the supers above that. It's first year, so they were packages, and I watched your video where you said you could get honey off of packages. Well, I've already got about 60 pounds off, and I'm pulling more. But I took the one medium super off, so now basically it's a deep and a medium, and man, they're jam packed. I mean, there is like a ton of bees. And I know I've heard everybody say you can go down to one deep for the winter, which I know probably most of those will die off, right? Now that, or will they thin out for fall?
Well, you're going to get a certain amount of thinning right now.
Okay.
Here's the thing. If you got an excess amount of bees and if you got drones in your area, I would make splits.
Okay.
I took a lot of my 8-frame stuff in just the last 5 days, and I took one 8-frame and I made 12 splits off of it. And
Okay.
all it was a double deep 8, had 2 supers of honey on it. I used honey and brood, and I made splits.
Okay.
I've got queens, and if you put a queen in there, you're doing better. Once you get some experience, you can go ahead and let them make your own queens, do a walk away or let queen cells, cut your queen cells.
Okay.
But first year, I think I would buy some queens. That way you got a queen out and running in about 4 days laying, build your population up.
Okay.
Now, most people don't realize the bees that you are looking at right now, that hive is jam-packed. In the next 2 months, the majority of them bees are going to die off on you.
Okay.
We got to get October and November and get that queen laying is maximum speed, as many bees, because those are your bees that's going through the winter, and those are the bees that start your hives in the springtime.
Okay.
What you're looking at now, a lot of people think, well, you got a lot of bees, they're going to go right through the winter. You can take a hive with 10 times less bees, and if they're healthy, they'll go through the winter much better. More bees are going to eat more honey. So those are things you consider. That's why I take hives that are in doubles or even, double with the super honey, break them down to singles or even put them in 5-frame boxes. Confine the area, do numbers. It's better to split them down, make 10 hives, and if you lost half of them, you got 5, rather than take 5 hives and try to go through the winter and lose all 5 because they just ate themselves out of house and home.
Yeah. Yeah, because my other hive is doing that. Just like you mentioned earlier tonight, I brought a queen up from Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
I had a nuke. I split my nuke about, I'm looking at my notes here, probably about 3-4 weeks ago. And I put a frame of honey and I moved 2 frames of brood with the bees on it, took them over there. And I'd seen yesterday, today I have 4 or 5 dual larvae. There's some eggs in there, but the frame of honey I put in there is completely gone.
Right.
So, and I was feeding them. I fed them this week twice, and then I stopped feeding them, and now that honey's gone. So they went through the honey pretty quick.
Well, if you got 2 frames of bees in there that was pretty much capped, they're going to go through about 2 frames to 3 frames of honey, just those bees hatching out, because those bees are basically your welfare of that hive. Okay. They're not going to go out and gather nothing. They're just going to consume stores.
Yeah, and the other nuke, I saw the queen in there today. I didn't see much eggs, but I think they're backfilling a lot of it right now with the syrup I'm giving them. So I don't know. That's the mean hive. That'll probably be the only one that makes it through.
Well, people say the mean hives make more honey and they go through the winter. That has nothing to do with it. No, it's a lot about the mites and the condition of the hive. Right now, you shouldn't be feeding any pollen patties. If you do, I would make them no bigger than the size of a golf ball flattened down. That would be maximum. You want that hive to consume that pollen patty within 24 hours, because all you're doing is feeding them beetles. Once they get a good foothold in there, within 7 days, you could lose a hive.
Yeah, I've seen
overrun a hive fast.
I've seen a couple of beetles in there. So I got the stuff in there. I got the beetle blasters and I got the CD case, but I've been feeding the dry pollen in that, like that Joe had, like the
D-Pro and stuff like that.
Yeah, they've finished it off once already.
Well, I don't think I would put pollen dry stuff in your hive. It's still
I got in that tube. I got in that tube hanging outside the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, you can take a bucket. You can get them from the bakeries, any of your supermarkets at the bakery. They'll give you some frosting buckets and just snap the lid on and cut you a slot in there about 2 inches high and about 3 inches long. Make it look like a fancy mailbox and just put a half a cup of pollen in there at a time. Turn it on the side and put it between 2 boxes and let them go in there and get what they want. Okay. That way it's going to run a lot less chances of you getting all them beetles in the hives.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Don.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And next over to Sheila. Go ahead, Sheila.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we'll hear you.
Okay. I just have a hard time hearing you on my cell phone this evening. So, Don, I did exactly what you said not to do at the beginning. My friend Ellie lost 2 queens in her hive, and we brought 2 boxes over 9:30 the other night and combined it with my hive. There were no queens for sale. We didn't know what else to do with this hive. So now I have a hive that's 2 deeps and 3 mediums high. I've never had a hive that big in my entire life. I'm not.
Why do you want to stack it that high? That's what I'm not understanding.
We didn't know what else to do with her hive that was 1 deep and 1 medium. That was her whole hive.
Yeah.
What else could we have done with it? There were no queens for sale, and she had no queen in her hive.
Well, if you're local, I got queens all the way up to the 30th of November. If everybody's on the chat or on my Facebook know I have queens, And when I get extras, a lot of times I'll put a post on Facebook and let people know I got a few extra queens. But I would have split them. Oh. Well, Greg is up there in Ohio. I'm sure he had queens all the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then my second question is, should I take any of those boxes off going into winter, off that hive?
Well, you got to remember, the higher the hive is, the more heat loss you're going to have. So they're going to eat more honey. The same principle where you live. If you're not using rooms upstairs in the second floor, you're going to block them off to hold the heat down. Same principle in the beehive. You start losing heat up to the top, and the bees have to eat more honey to create the heat.
Okay.
And make sure you got ventilation in all your boxes. That's the main thing. So you don't close them up so tight that they sweat in there.
When should I start consolidating that hive? Now, or should I wait till September or October? Or...
Well, right now in Ohio, you should probably be running about the middle of October, because right now your goldenrod should be coming on good.
It is. It's pretty good. I mean, July weather determines how our goldenrod does now. So we had a pretty decent July here, but not spectacular.
Yeah. But what I would do is get in contact with several of my students around there and have a list, because when you go in that hive, if you don't have a queen, something happens to your queen, it's nice to be able to drive within an hour or two and pick a queen up. And anybody that's doing commercial beekeeping, I'm sure they're going to have a few queens around.
Is it too late to requeen that hive, or can we still do that?
If you got eggs in there and you got the hive is quiet, you more than likely got a queen in there. If it's that tall, I would break it down and find a laying queen, a mated queen from somebody, and do a split.
Okay, I'll give it a try. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, now over to Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey guys, just wanted to first and foremost say thanks for everything you guys do here on the Bee Chat, and also down there in Lula, Georgia. We're based out of Ohio here in Zanesville, and this is our third year beekeeping. And we paid the price last year and went the treatment-free route, and literally lost every single hive, almost 30 hives, and made the decision to become a commercial beekeeper at Don's, and go down and learn from him hands-on. And man, if you guys have the opportunity to go down to Don's yard and learn from Don, it will literally be a game changer for you. We did that, and bought some nukes from Don, turned 6 nukes into 20 easy. And right now they're super strong, they're looking good. But I wanted to first again say thanks. Secondly, just if anyone's on the treatment-free fence, you just really need to take a careful look at that. The things that Don says to do, if you just listen, he makes it common sense. It makes it easy, and believe me, it works, especially up here in Ohio. So we're looking forward to keeping these bees going strong, coming out of the spring, to be able to split like crazy, and have some bees here in our commercial yard that we started. So when we went down to Don, when he speaks, every time he says something to you, it's like he's throwing you a $20 bill. Every time he says something, and you're just picking them up and you're putting them in your back pocket. And then a month later, you end up taking that draw out. And all of a sudden you're seeing all the things that he said that didn't quite register. It all falls into place. And it's like, oh my gosh, well, Don said that, well, Don said that. Eventually you think everyone gets tired of hearing you say, well, that's not what Don does. But anyways, so Don, again, thanks for everything that you do. I had a really good time down in your yard. Looking forward to coming down a couple more times this year and learning those things that we can. With all that experience that we got from Don, me and a couple buddies here in Ohio started a beekeeping podcast called the Contrary Beekeeper Show. And in that podcast, almost every single one of them, we're relaying things that we learned from Don and how it applies to us. We're 3 beginning beekeepers. We're not the voice of beekeeping. We're just sharing our experience in Ohio. Here we just released it recently. But the most recent episode, we actually talk about my visit down at Don's yard, and how important it was to find that mentor and to kind of learn those things from Don. So again, Don, thanks for everything that you do. It makes a world of difference. And
if you had it all to do over again, and people ask you, is it worth getting into commercial beekeeping, and can you make a living? What could you tell them?
Oh, it's so easy. You would think it's common sense. If you're dedicated to it and you can build boxes, if you just do the things that Don says, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. So like I said, we went from 6 to 20. We had some weird weather, some wet and some cold spells. I've got birds that are flying down and picking off queens and bees as they're flying out of the hive. I could have probably been to 35 or 40 hives easily if the weather would have been more cooperative. But just with what I learned from Don in that one visit, everything that I've learned from these chats, you talk about that's the ROI on that investment is just, you just can't get any more. It's common sense. You know, you buy 6 nukes, you turn them into 20, you got your money back immediately, and then you're already in the black first year of beekeeping. That's huge. That's a big deal. So.
And the nice thing about it is I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. You can listen to these chats, don't buy a thing from me, and you can still be successful. Right now, beekeeping is hot. If you can't make money in beekeeping, you're sleeping too long days. I mean, get out there and do a little something. You cannot cut enough queen cells and make boxes fast enough. If you just take the simple procedures that I'm trying to teach everybody, it's not rocket science, it's just hard work. You can make a really good living, and it's steady, and it's year-round. So don't let people, bee clubs is good to a certain point. Association, let people know that you have local bees, that's good. But they're trying to sell you something all the time. And diplomas and all these degrees that people have. I'm the dumbest beekeeper out there. I got a 7th grade education, and I teach people that have masters and all kinds of degrees, but they have no common sense. It's just common sense beekeeping. That's all it is. If it don't sound right, it can't work.
That's it. I was down there right after, unfortunately, you had your some theft there in your yard, and you had fresh, brand new news reporters showing up the day that I was there. And, you know, these ladies were in dresses and heels and were terrified of bees. And Don has a way of just explaining things and calming people down and giving them the common sense. I mean, I feel like that lady who is not a beekeeper knows more about bees than probably 75% of beekeepers that have been doing it for 10 years. And before you know it, she's holding a bee. She's right in front of the hive. She's right in it. She's not getting stung. Everyone's calm, and you know, Don's been doing it long enough that he's got a lot to say, and it's definitely if you can get down to Don's, it's worth it. I can't say it enough. I got one quick question, Don. Like I said, we're up to 20 hives now. I've been monitoring for mites. We're going to be treating here soon. So far, I've had zero mites and 2 mites out of 300 every time I do an alcohol wash. So they're strong, they're doing good. I know you used to be in Ohio, and now you're down in Georgia. If you were to do it again, how would you overwinter your bees in Ohio? Right now I'm running 5-frame and 8-frame mediums, and that's it. How many boxes, what would you do to get your bees through the wintertime?
Well, Joe May is over there, and he's probably got the similar weather that you got. But personally, if I was in Ohio, I was in the northern part. I was like 60 miles from Lake Erie. So I got that lake effect. And I run 5-frame with a medium super on it, and all winter. It does a whole lot better. And back then, I was running 10-frame. So when I started playing around with 5-frame years ago, going back into the early 90s, people laughed at me. They said, "You're stupid. You can't run a 5-frame box through the winter. You got to have a double 10-frame or it's going to starve. You got to have 60 pounds, 80 pounds of honey." Well, all them people that kept saying I was crazy, that didn't know what I was talking about, why are they all running 5-frame boxes now? It don't make no sense to me. So, you know, I am trying to put out there and teach where I made mistakes. I made more mistakes than every beekeeper in here. You take all the beekeepers in here right now and add up all your mistakes and then multiply it by 10. I probably made more than that. And I still make mistakes because I'm not paying attention sometimes. But that's all about beekeeping. Learn from your mistakes. Don't keep making them over and over.
Well, I don't want to go into the winter too lean and learn from that mistake the hard way. If you had, and I wouldn't hold you to it, if you had to guess on 5 and 8 frame boxes that are healthy, would you say a pair of mediums is enough, or would you go more towards 3 mediums on 5 and 8 frame boxes?
I would go no more than an 8 frame box and a 5 frame medium with a hive top feeder, and I would save my honey. And if they do need some in January, I'd add some honey. And usually in January in a 5 frame box, a quart to 2 quarts of honey will carry you a week to 2 weeks, because
Okay,
in the
so you're
winter
saying
time
singles.
they don't eat as much.
Okay, so you're saying singles with a hive top feeder.
Yeah, the more you can confine those
Okay.
bees. I've had bees go through the winter much better, the size of a grapefruit. And then I've had some that was 5 frames that you thought, man, they're going to make it, and they didn't.
Okay.
So, you
All
know,
right.
main thing I think is your moisture problem. People try to tighten those hives up too much. Drill a hole, put some hardware cloth over it. If
I
there's
do.
too much ventilation, they'll propolize it.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Don. Appreciate you.
Okay, next over to Mark Hanna. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Don.
Hey.
This is Mark Hanna from Newport, Tennessee. We had talked on the phone earlier, and I didn't get a chance to get down to see you to get those queens. But I've got 3 strong hives, and these hives have kind of been ones that we've tried to do our testing on. We've got other hives at another location that we've kind of just left alone and just went through them like we're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But these are really strong hives. Is it too late to possibly make our own queens? Because I've watched your videos and I've got all the stuff together. Is it too late to make queens, or would you advise us to just not do it and just get queens from you and possibly start in the spring to make your own queens?
If you've got some experience raising queens and stuff, and if you got drones, you know, it's a learning thing, do it. But if you can afford it, right now, you're much further ahead by mated queens, because that puts you down the road faster, because time is running out. You know, a mated queen is out laying in 5 to 7 days. You got eggs going in there. You got larvae developing, where, you know, you try to make your own queens, and you're going to do your queens right now. You should be getting your green comb. You should be running hives that's got at least 1 frame of drone comb in there, and feed them so you got a lot of drones. Because if you don't have enough drones, you're not going to get good matings.
Thank you.
Supplement feeding too. You know, if you're not supplement feeding when you're raising queens, it's not like doing a honey. If you're doing honey and letting them make their own queens, you can get by on bare necessities. But if you're trying to do, you know, a production, you have to feed them. You have to put it there for them, you know, make good queens.
Okay.
But 3 hives, I would split them. I mean, you could buy queens, take those 3 and split them to 9. That's not much to split. If you lost half of them, you're still ahead. Because you got a good honey flow in Tennessee yet.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain what we've got going on in East Tennessee? Because the other beekeepers say it's a light flow, and I'm like, well, I'd like to hear somebody more experienced.
Well, here's one thing I'll tell you about beekeepers. If you think if you get the idea that if you're going to take 1 dime out of their pocket, they're going to give you some bad information. No, there's no good honey flow around here, because they don't want you putting hives around their area. They think they need all that honey. So, you know, find people that's actually wanting to share stuff with you. You know, it's a lot easier if you can depend on people. There's no big secrets in here, but a lot of people try to keep it. Oh, this is my honey hole down here. You don't need to be here. So, you know, I'm trying to share as much as I possibly can.
And we appreciate it.
All right, moving on to Ernest. Go ahead, Ernest.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I have a question for you, Don, that probably never been asked before.
Uh-oh.
As a laying worker at lays drones, are they as good as a queen at lays drones as far
Are
as
they
mating
as good? What do you mean are they as good?
Well, for mating purposes. In other words, if you got a box full of drones that was laid by a worker,
No. You can't clone it. You got to have the real McCoy there.
I just wondered, a lot of times if you got a laying worker, they'll lay a whole box full of drones.
But they're infertile drone.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out.
If you got, well, unless you wait and see how the brood develops, usually your laying workers, they're going to get a beveled cap on them, But a lot of times, an inexperienced beekeeper, right away they jump to conclusions. I got a laying worker because they got a cell with 4 or 5 eggs in it. A lot of times when a queen first gets mated for a day or two, they're going to lay multiple eggs. And then they start straightening out. But if it is a laying worker, don't count on getting any mating done. If you do, you're going to have some bad genetics going.
Yeah, usually a laying worker, they don't lay all the way in the bottom of the cell. They just lay on the side because they're not as long as the queen is. So, but I just wondered if it was any good. But you say there'll be no good for breeding then, right?
No. Not unless I've been falling by the wayside. I try to go through my hives, and if you do run across that, the best thing to do is try to, get that out of there. Correct the situation. Don't let that go on very long. I like to cut that comb down myself.
Well, I still have a few drones in my hive, not a whole lot, but
yeah, there's a few.
I tried my practice again at making queens and grafting. It went pretty good as far as getting the right larva out, just about the size of a comma.
Now's the time to practice because when spring comes, you can start making queens up there if you got drones.
Yeah.
See, you could probably do yours probably in the 3rd week in March, but the whole trick of it is you're going to have to take a trip down south and buy a few packages. It's got a lot of drones in it.
Well, I might be back down. I've been down 2 years. I like Greg. I go down and get a refresher course every year. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate all that you do there, Don, and it's really come in handy. So,
I see your beekeeper hiding way out there in the back. He's not up in the front tonight, is he?
yeah, he'll be up here. He's got some questions he's been asking me.
I got a question. If he works bees, is he working without a veil?
Sometimes he does, and sometimes he
How
don't.
does he keep the bees out of his beard? That's why I don't wear a beard.
They don't sting when they're in the beard. It's just if they get all the way through, that's when you have to worry about it.
Yeah.
The hard part I'm finding is using the vaporizer masks.
Yeah.
Get a good feel, and that stuff is wicked when you can get a good breath of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Over to Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Don.
Hey.
I trying to get bees out of a tree, forced an abscond today, and the queen didn't come out.
Nope.
But I had the bees moving into a hive. They're fanning and all that, pulling the other bees in. How long should I leave that hive there, hoping that the queen moves over?
Have you ever heard that old saying that the captain is the last one to leave the ship?
Yeah.
I have done trap outs, and I have not yet, in all the years I've done them, got the queen out.
Okay.
That queen will stay in there until she dies. She will not leave. Now, the only exception is if they overpopulate, then they swarm.
Okay.
That's
So
why when you made that post, I didn't make too many comments because I like to let all the educated people talk about it first.
So with this hive, should I leave it out there for a day or two and then move it and put
If you've got bees that came out of that tree, the only way you're going to make them survive is drop a frame of eggs in and let
Right.
them try to make a queen. But if you don't have drones up where you live, you're not going to get them mated.
I do have some drones. There
Okay.
were actually some drones coming out of that hive.
Yeah.
So.
But
Okay.
you know, if you do cutouts and stuff, I had a fellow over here a couple days ago, and he was talking about doing a cutout. One thing that I like to do if you do a cutout, if you can, take a hive or two and set it up on the property about a day to a week ahead of time. When you do your cutout, you're pulling the siding off, you cut and comb, you're always going to get honey running down the side, dripping on the ground. Now you got all the little maids there. They can fly over and keep everything tidied up for you so you don't lose any honey. They pick every bit up for you, and they clean out the cavity for you pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, this was just a lady down the road from where I've got my hives. They had bought some property and they were logging it all, and they wouldn't cut down this tree because it had the bees in it. So
It's probably a good location next year to set a hive box up as a bait box and catch a swarm.
right. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Don.
Okay.
Okay, over to Dale. Go ahead, Dale.
Hey, Don, how you doing?
Hey. Okay.
You said go ahead and start feeding now to build up the brood for winter. Do you
Right.
put your essential oil in the fall too?
I don't do a whole lot of essential oils from this time out for the simple reason cause a lot more robin. I got a container out there I'm feeding. I just let it kind of drip all day long every day and just keep a steady feed on them. But one thing you're going to do something like that is keep your boxes reduced down so you don't get robin.
Okay, appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Philip, go ahead.
Hey, another question, Don.
Mhm.
Where I have I got the 4 hives where I have them at. I have them on about 100 acres worth of apples and other stuff on orchard. A weird question is, how do I keep them down? Like, say if I split, if I make them through in the springtime, I split. How do people keep their hives to like the number they want to manage, other than an occasional, swarm or dying off or whatever?
Occasional swarm. Well,
Yeah.
if you listen to all my videos that I put out there, bees do 2 things. They multiply and they store honey. And then what happens is if they can't store honey or they can't reproduce more, they make swarm cells. That is the natural cycle of what the bee is going to do. The only thing you can do is have some extra boxes. And if you don't want more than so many hives, find a bee club. Find a young guy that wants to get into bees and donate him a hive. That's one way. I mean, there's people that 3 or 4 hives and that's all they want.
Yeah, well, I want more. I want more than that. I just don't know how much the buddy of mine that owns the orchard, how many he wants, but he seems like he don't care if they're 10 or 15 or 20 out there. So,
Well, have you got them all the same color?
they're in pairs of 2 now, and yes, they're all white, but there's only 2 per location right now.
I would either paint the front, a different color so they can distinguish themselves.
Okay.
4 hives is nothing for an orchard. I mean,
Oh no.
and then wherever you go to church at, mention your beekeeper, and I'll bet you'll have a half a dozen people say, well, you have bees, bring some over here. And sometimes you can get a good location. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's something you enjoy, something you like, don't let numbers stop you.
Oh,
Wood,
no.
wood's cheap.
I love it. Yeah, I'm having a ball doing it. Like I said, I watched your packages video where you installed the package, and I haven't got any honey off that nuke, but like I said, I'm working on about 70 pounds now off the packages.
If you got a nuke and you're not making honey, then you have a problem. You probably have bees that got mites and they're feeding honey or nectar to the bees. And when they get to a certain point, the bees sense that they have a mite and they're hauling them out. They're not fully developed. So that'll keep populations down. It keeps your honey down too. But if you're not getting honey, then something is wrong, definitely somewhere.
Yeah, they just had like a frame or 2 in there, and like I said, then I moved it over and I did that split, and then the other hive, they ate it up. So I'm going to start feeding them again. But yeah, that's just been a crazy Nuke.
I have a preacher, he gets on here every so often, and I've sold him packages 3 years ago. And on 2-pound packages, he averaged 3 to 6 gallons per hive the first year. And he split them after he started pulling honey, he split them 3 to 4 times after that. So
Okay.
you take care of them, they're going to multiply. That's just a natural thing.
Yeah, and the packages, they're really good. I mean, she's laying good. I mean, the bees are gentle, and I would really like to try and make some more off of that.
Yeah.
I'll try and look for some more queens because I really want. I think I could probably make a couple splits still.
Whereabouts you live?
I'm in Michigan, Lower Michigan.
Joe probably got some up there. I got another Willie's Honey up there. He's by Chicago. He's a student about 10 years ago. I don't know if he's selling any bees right now.
Yeah, I was thinking of contacting Joe because he's in Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah, we got students all over the place.
So so you say I probably got enough to make a split then?
More than enough.
Okay. Okay. And then then you move the frame with the brood and the bees and everything over? You don't have to shake any in or just move last time I just moved the frames over.
This time of the year, if you put a frame of honey and maybe a frame, even 2 frames of brood, I'd shake an extra frame in there, just good measure, you know.
Okay.
And then put your queen in there.
Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate it, Don.
Okay.
Over to John. Go ahead, John.
Hello, everybody. Quick question. When I started beekeeping, I started out with a small cell foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm getting queens from other places besides my neighbors to get genetics, does it make sense to continue running small cell foundation, or should I just run any type of foundation?
Depends on what you want to maintain. I like small cell because I don't have to treat for trachea mites, and there's 22% more bees on small cell than there is standard cells. You know, most people don't understand that. So you got more bang for the buck, and there are less mite problems in them. That's why everybody says if you don't want to treat with chemicals, put a lot of drone comb and freeze it. So what they're trying to tell you, if you read between the lines, is mites prefer a larger cell. So the smaller the cell, you know, less time for mites.
Okay, great. So I guess that sounds like I'll continue to run small cell then.
See?
Thank you. That was my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, we are caught up for now. Nobody else has their hands up. We're all just watching Anthony making bread. Having fun there, Anthony?
Yeah. It's my other new hobby, you know. When I'm not taking care of the bees and the hornets, I took up baking again. And some of you guys that are on my page, you see some of what I'm doing.
Everybody needs a hobby.
Yeah.
But I don't have any bees because mine are just watching soap operas and eating all day. That's all they do right now. It's raining.
Well, Joe May's sleeping tonight, I guess. He ain't saying a whole lot tonight.
All right. Paul's got a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, just getting back to Anthony, I told him he's going to have to open up.
Can't hear you, Paul.
I said, getting back to Anthony, he's going to have to open up a bakery pretty soon. But Don, getting back to those 5-frame, you know, overwintering 5-frame nukes, I tell you, I had a handful of bees in there as well last year, and they went through the winter just fine. And I also have those 4-frame double nuke boxes, and those did really well also. And it was just amazing how such a small hive compared to a large hive how those bees can make it through a cold winter. And I'll tell you, they were buried in the snow.
Well, see, a lot of people, they're what I consider backyard beekeeping. It's totally different than when you're making a living at it. You have to do things that are more productive, you know. You can't afford to lose half a hive because the queen didn't return. So you make queens on a smaller scale with smaller amount of resources, and then you make your splits.
Yeah, well, I made some splits, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I mean, I gave them 2 gallons of syrup each already, and they're doing just fine. I tell you, they really built up. And I'm just going to overwinter them probably 5 over 5 and let them go like that. So.
I don't know if anybody had seen up there in New York, they had a hot dog vendor and had a swarm on top of his thing, and he had a beekeeper there in a full bee suit trying to vacuum them off. I got a chuckle out of that. I would have just reached up with my hand and scooped them off personally. I wouldn't have sucked them up and tried to damage them in that hot weather.
Well, I tell you, there's a guy, I think he's in Brooklyn, and he's got hives in each borough in the city, and he's marketing his honey like Queens honey, Brooklyn honey, you know, from all of the boroughs. It's a different honey that he's selling. So he's supposedly he's doing very well.
Well, I don't know if you watch all the posts that get, there's quite a few posts get on my Facebook page, but DC Honeybees is, he runs, Jeff Miller runs that. And he kind of specializes in Washington, DC with rooftop beekeeping. And he reached out and touched me. His daughter come down here when she was about 12 years old. They drove down from Washington. I guess it's been about 8 or 9 years ago. And for some reason, he got out of bees, and now I think he's wanting to get back into it. I don't know what the situation is up there, but we have some up here in Atlanta. Some of the chefs got big rooftop beehives up there in downtown Atlanta. You would think downtown Atlanta pavement, there's not that much, but they find enough out there to survive. It's amazing.
The only drawback on that I would see is like keeping bees in the city. I mean, a lot of people with their land have landscapers come and they throw a lot of fertilizer and pesticides down, you know, on their lawns and whatnot. And so I don't really know how that would affect the bees and the honey, you know, as far as that's concerned. So.
Well, from what I have heard back, secondhand information, it's some of the people that's running beehives on roofs have very low beetle populations. So there's no place for the beetles to reproduce other than if someone's moving hives down the road and you get some flyouts, you know. But, you know, what can you do? If you're in the city and you want bees, I mean, more and more people. In France, they're doing a lot more of that too.
Well, that's true too with the small hive beetles. I guess they can't, you know, reproduce. There's no soil for them, you know, if they're on a rooftop.
Right.
You know, where else are they going to go? So,
yeah.
But I tell you, you know, getting to the small hive beetles, I really haven't had a problem with small hive beetles this year. I mean, I see very few hive beetles in the hives. Maybe, you know, less than a dozen. I mean, Jesus, you know.
Every year is different. I mean, this year, you know, I've got the same location. There's people that swear by moving locations you don't have as many beetles, but I'm basically on the same location for years after years, and I'm running maybe 1 to 5 beetles in a nuke, and most of my nukes are running 2 to 4 frames at the most. My 8 frames, you know, I might find 3 or 4 in there. So it's one of the years. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a better, you know, fall honey flow and, you know, a milder winter. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping for a milder winter. Last year was a killer. But then again, too, with the small hive beetles, I mean, you have them under the pines also, which helps too, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, Don, that's it.
Okay.
Over to Debbie. Go ahead, Debbie.
Hey, Don. I'm out here in West Georgia, and you came out and spoke with us, and I really enjoyed your talk. My question is, I have some nice honey, some nice wax left over from having harvested. It's fluffy. It may even still be impregnated with some honey. And I laid it out for my bees, and they won't touch it. What's up?
Well, it sounds like you've got a honey flow where you live. Because if you got honey on the wax cappings, even if it's fermented, I've seen bees get on it. What I would do if it's fluffy like you say it is, get you a crock pot, or you can do a regular old pot, put 3/4 of the pot full of water and put all those cappings in there and just bring it to where it just starts to boil. And then just pour it right into a 5-gallon bucket or one of those 2-gallon buckets and just let it harden. The
Okay.
water goes to the bottom and you'll have a nice clean chunk of wax. So then if you want to make candles or lip balms and those type things, or you could sell it at a bee club. If it's capped,
Okay.
get at least $15 to $20 a pound.
Okay, thanks for that. I just thought maybe they were being picky.
No, bees are not that picky. I mean, you can pour regular honey out of a hive and set frames out and they won't touch it if there's a honey flow on. But if there's no honey flow on, they'll get on it.
Well, they're eating a lot of sugar water right now, so I don't think I've got a honey flow going just now. I mean, I'm just about 2 hours west of you.
Mhm.
So I don't think I've got one going on. They're eating my sugar water like pigs. So thanks, Don.
Okay.
Okay, over to Joe May. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I just want to let you know I wasn't asleep, Don. I don't have a question, but I'm going to tell a little story. It kind of pertains to what everybody's been talking to about wintering bees and hives and size. 3 years ago, I had a hive, late split, October. They didn't accept the queen for 3 times. On the 4th time, which ended up being in the 1st of November, they was queen right. They literally had a cluster the size of a handball. They had no stores. I brought a frame in here and poured honey over the frame and stuck it in there, wrote them off. But they was healthy bees. I mean, they was mite free. The box was well ventilated, they had no moisture, and they was fed up good. And I wrote them off. I opened that hive up in late February on a warm day up there. They was a cluster the size of a softball. She had made bees all winter, and that was the first 5-frame box that next spring to be put in a double 5-frame. So the size of a hive means nothing. It's
Right.
the health, pest-free, and the other situation. I mean, I don't know how they could build enough heat the size of a handball is just a little bigger than a golf ball. There's not that many bees in it, but so and they wintered. So,
Well, there's a lot of people that they have the impression that the queen stops laying. The queen is going to lay every day, 365 days a year. Now she'll slow down. The way you can reason that out, you think nature is going to stop the queen from laying so they can't reproduce their own kind? There's always going to be some eggs and some amount of brood. Even drones. I've had people that's kept bees for a year and they'll swear there is no drones after a certain point. Nature doesn't work that way.
So that ease maybe some people's minds on the size of a box. It really doesn't matter. I mean, I wrote them off. I didn't think there's no way they can make, and they made it flying colors. That's all I got.
Yep.
Okay, over to Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, Don, when you said that I'm going to have a problem building boxes fast enough, that's the truth. Which is the reason why I think I clung so hard to your Queen Castle videos on YouTube. I noticed there at your yard when I was down to visit that you're using the mini mating nukes, not so much the Queen Castles, but because I'm so, like I said, can't build them quick enough, I took a few 8-frame boxes, made Queen Castles just like you did there with 3 divisions, separate entrances, the whole thing. It works great. The problem I seem to have though is I think I'm off on my timing when I'm moving that small the small colony out of the castle to a 5-frame box. Should I wait until she comes back and is laying, or should I wait until she hatches and then move them to a 5-frame?
Always wait till the queen is laying for at least a day, 3 days at least.
Okay.
Those are basically set up, those Queen Castles was kind of designed basically for people that run plastic, that can't cut queen cells out and move the cell, so they could just drop the whole frame in there. But the mini nukes now is set up for volume of producing queens. It's nothing to run 100 or 200. I mean, anybody could run 200 of those minis, and 2 hives is enough bees to stock 50 to 100 of those little mini nukes, because a cup of bees is all you take in a queen cell. I mean, you take a queen, that's $35 as fast as you can do it. So
Yeah.
people say, you know, they want to do honey. I'd much rather run 100 queen boxes out there than have to bust my back and buy big equipment to move honey and, you know, hire more help to move the honey. And everybody's doing honey. So that drives the price down.
Okay, so as long as I've got a heavy frame of honey, the queen cell, and a cup or two of bees, that should be plenty of storage for them until she comes back. Even if she is late, like at 10 to 14 days, if the weather's terrible, that's still going to be plenty of time, plenty of honey for them.
In a queen castle or in a mini nuke?
Sorry, a queen castle, a two-frame.
So you don't need a whole frame of bees. You can put a queen cell in there and about a cup of bees, because all they have to do is they either keep that queen cell warm or they'll keep it cool. That's all it is. And enough honey for, you know, a cup of bees.
Okay.
So
thanks.
If you put too much honey in there and you don't have enough bees to cover the frame of honey, you could get robin or you could get ant problems.
Okay. Good enough. Thanks, Don.
Okay. Over to Philip. Go ahead, Philip. Oh, hold on, you're not unmuted yet. It's not letting me do it. See if you can unmute on your side.
He's still muted.
Yeah,
there he goes.
All right.
Okay.
So the question is, I pulled all my honey out tonight, the mediums. 2 of them, they didn't make the shake it test. They were about 3/4 maybe, or one side wasn't capped. And is it okay to take those 2 medium frames and just throw them in that one deep I got where they ate all that, just to have them clean it up? Okay.
You don't have to have it capped, you know, or completely cured out for if you're going to use it as feed. Stick the whole frame in there and they'll clean it up and they'll use it. They'll survive.
Okay.
The thing about the shake test is basically if you're going to use it for your consumption or you're going to sell it, if you turn the frame sideways and just give it a little shake and look at the top of the frames and you hold it over your hive, if you see droplets of honey or nectar coming out, then you know it's got too much moisture.
Okay.
If you want to save it, the only thing to do is bring it up to a boil and then put it in a bucket and use it as bee feed.
Okay.
I mean, you could use it, but it's going to be diluted down with water.
Yeah, I just thought about, because I have a deep box, I didn't want to build no crazy comb, but I thought just about throwing them in that deep box for now where the new queen is, and they ate that one frame up, just long enough for them to clean it out, and then I'd pull them out.
Well, you might forget about it and they'll draw some crazy chrome because they'll do it in a few days.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Scott, go ahead.
Evening.
Hey, Don, I was wondering about, you said the essential oils, don't use them this time of the year?
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't recommend it.
Don't use straight sugar water? Okay.
Unless
so
you're trying,
don't use nothing. No.
Are you trying to treat for nosema or something? Or just for a buildup?
No, I'm just trying to just a build up.
If you've just for a buildup, you know, I wouldn't worry about it. You know, I'd feed them sugar water and then do the oxalic acid. And make sure you do at least 3 or 4 of them, you know, before the cold weather gets in.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I will also ask you about the 2-frame deeps like Joe runs.
Right.
What's your opinion on them?
Well, I mean, if you're going to start building equipment, pretty soon you're going to have a lot of varied sizes of everything. You've got to kind of limit yourself. You know, if you're going to run queens or if you're going to run nukes. I mean, if you're going to sell nukes, then you need a 5-frame nuke. So a 2-frame nuke, that's all you're going to be able to do is raise a queen in it. Unless you start doing some, you know, grab a few frames from each one and build out a 5-frame box. Each piece of equipment is usually set up for a certain type of thing. That's what your mini nukes are for, strictly for mating queens. But your 5-frame box, you know, you can make
I just have so much trouble with. Yeah, I just have so much trouble with them sugar ants still. I mean, I had a queenless hive day before yesterday, and I put a frame of some eggs and some brood in there. They had probably, I don't know, probably 1.5 pounds, maybe 2 pounds of bees. And I went and checked them today, and the ants had done. So
Are they fire ants or are they
the
those
sugar ants are so
sugar ants?
bad.
Well,
They're the little sugar ants.
I've raised queens in 1-frame boxes with those little ants in there. They don't seem to bother nothing. I always wonder if you got fire ants in there.
No, they don't, because you can go in and they don't bite you. I mean, they're just sugar ants. So that's what I call them.
Yeah.
And I mean, they'll go in and take the brood out and eat the brood.
Are you running screen bottom
they'll go
boards?
in- No, I use solid bottom boards.
If you're running solid bottom boards and you're running 1 frame in there, you should be running a real small entrance.
Yeah, I put a reducer on there before I done that, and they still went in there, and they was gone today. All the bees in there was gone.
It sounds like you put a bunch of bees in there that was field bees, and they probably flew back to the original location. If you make a split like that, you should close them up, screen them off for a day or two.
Now it was a queenless hive, and I just put a frame of eggs and stuff in there.
Oh, if it's been queenless for a while and you put a frame of eggs in there this time of the year, unless it has a queen cell on it, you're not going to have good results.
Okay.
Springtime,
the ants, they took over.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I know.
There was no defending there, because if you got a hive that's got any kind of defending at all, a frame or two of bees, they'll defend it. It's basically the frame of bees was demoralized. They just give up a life, I mean, there was no hope. You might have put a frame in there, didn't have enough bees, and if it got really hot where you live, either the heat or the cold. If you get chill brood, they abandon the brood. If you get heat, too much heat in there, it cooks the brood. The bees won't do nothing. They won't make cells.
Well, I'm in central Alabama.
Yeah. Well, you might have a heat problem. You got metal on the lids?
No, I eliminated all that. I took your advice on all that. I took all the metal off and painted them.
Yeah.
I got to get rid of the ants, and I do not know how. This fuel is seeming to work, and I did not put this fuel around. I had that particular hive on top of a 55-gallon drum, and I did not put this fuel around it before I done that. If I'd have done that, they might have made it.
Yeah. It's just something you have to work at for a while.
You're right. I'm still going to get up there and see you. I mean, I know I've been saying that for a while. It just works hard to get off and do it. All right. That's all I got. Okay. Appreciate it, Don.
Okay.
Over to Mark Hanna. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Don. One other question. I've got a situation that all I've got is just wax foundation that's not been drawn. And I start doing these splits. Am I at a disadvantage because I don't have drawn foundation, or will the bees go ahead and let foundation out this late in the year?
Well, are you trying to make queens and you put a frame in there of new foundation? Is that what you're talking about?
No, just in your splits. I was going to make a split and get some queens probably from you or another supplier.
If you're going to put new foundation in there, you're going to have to feed the heck out of those bees or begin a good honey flow. And you can only use probably 1 sheet at a time. I find this time of the year, a starter strip is a whole lot better than a full sheet in there.
Okay.
Because they'll draw it out and there's less area for them to protect. But I like to put my starter strip towards the middle. That way you have more concentration of bees there.
That answer your question, Mark?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, just making sure. All right, last question is Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
Don, when you sell your nukes, do you put them in those Jester nuke boxes?
Can you hear him, Don? I can barely hear you, Paul.
Don, when you sell your nukes, do you put them in the Jester nuke boxes or you keep them in your wooden boxes?
No, people usually bring their boxes here, or I will sell them a wooden box. I don't like to use the cardboard box for transporting bees. If they do, I mean, they bring their own cardboard boxes. You know, I point out the queen, I show them the brood, and once they leave, I mean, you know, they rock around in there, they kill the queen, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of people don't know that sometimes we have to buy more bees than we could ever produce. So if you're a local beekeeper and you're one of my students, you can't sell bees. I don't want to hear, I can't make no money, because either I'll come up to your place or Stephen will come up there. We'll bring the boxes, we'll shake the bees into it, and we'll pay you by the pound. So you can take a hive and shake 2 to 3 packages a week. That's steady income. If you got 100 hives, we'll be there on a regular basis, or, you know, whatever you got. Because there's no way we can make, you know, the amount of bees we have to make every year, because it's growing every year. And I'm trying to send more and more to my students. But, you know, you get overrun. Believe me.
All right. Thanks, Don.
Okay.
And that'll do it for tonight. Thank you, Don. Thanks, everyone. Next chat will be on September 15th.
Get your questions ready. Appreciate everybody showing up. Everybody have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.